No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it? You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
Hey gardeners, hope you're all having a great week in your gardens. I'm out here in our alleyway space. We're starting to get some frost, as you can see. Our vines are starting to wilt here under the cold, but I'm taking our time today to harvest out our potatoes from this alleyway garden space that we have here. Get it all cleared up, ready for some leaf mulch for the winter here real soon. You can see we've got some garlic that's popping up already. Lots and lots of cherry tomatoes still. We've got lots growing on here still. So, all right, everybody, let's get growing. All right, everybody. It's Saturday, so it's time for another edition of the Let's Get Growing show here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today. It's great to see all of you here joining with us today. We've got a great show ahead of you today. Hopefully everything works out good, but we've got joining with us here just a little bit later on in the show. We've got Dr. Jeff Pierce talking all about garden and lifestyle medicine today. I met Dr. Pierce down at the National Heirloom Exposition. He did a great talk down there, and I knew I just had to have him on the show to talk all about that as well. So look forward to that conversation coming up here just a little bit later in the show. And in here in just a little bit, we're also going to talk with Yasmin El Gabri from at MCR Urban Gardener in the UK. We've got her joining with us today. We're going to talk all about her gardens and some alleyway gardening as well too. So that's going to be really fun. So you'll definitely want to stick around and check out these great interviews today with our great guests today. So if you are here with us at the top of the show, definitely hit that like button. Click the thumbs up there if you can, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already, and click that bell notification so that you can be notified of all of our upcoming videos, live streams, and all that sort of stuff. And then definitely share with all your friends. Let them know about the Let's Get Growing show here and all of our great guests that we get to talk to each and every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, we've got some great shows ahead for us all here too as well. And also big, huge shout out to all of you who are watching us on the replay. It's really great to have you here joining with us as well. The live streams are really awesome, but also to be able to catch our show whenever you want is really great too, about having these live streams on YouTube. So thank you for joining with us here on the replay, and get down into the comments. Let me know you're here, even if you're just going to say hi. But if you got any suggestions for the show, you got any ideas of some great guests that you might like to see us have on the show as well too, definitely get into the comments there. Any questions or anything as well. If you are here joining with us live, though, definitely jump into our chat there. Let us know you're here. Let us know what you've got going on. If you've got any questions or comments, definitely put them in there. And if you have any questions, though, too, I'll let you know right at the top of the show. Put them in nice, bold capital letters all the way across there, too, so that I can see and recognize questions from the conversation. So that'll be really helpful, too. We'll be able to hopefully make sure that we can get your question featured on the show. And also definitely check out all of our links down in the description. We've got links to our guests, links to all sorts of other great things as well too. So you'll definitely want to check that out as well. And yeah, we've got lots and lots of things going on here. Really good. Let's check out. Let's see here real quick. I want to make sure we're talking about, last week. If you didn't have a chance to check out last week's show, it didn't actually, and this is what I was going to say, hopefully everything goes well today. Last week, our last week's shows, Saturday and Sunday, probably didn't go as well as planned. We didn't get to see our main guests for each of the days, but we did still get some pretty great conversations. We did have Cindy Tobeck joining with us here on the show. and she talked all about growing giants and her growing season this year. That was a really great conversation with her. And yeah, so you'll definitely want to check that one out. In our Sunday edition of the show, we were supposed to have a fun gardening roundtable talking with our good friend Ryan Cook from Heavenly Hills Homestead and his friend Jason Covey. But Ryan ended up having some issues with losing his internet. I think there was a power pole down or something like that, so we weren't able to get Ryan on the show. But we did get a great conversation with his friend Jason Covey, talking all about his adventures growing giants as well too. So we'll be looking to hopefully maybe get Travis Ganger. Travis Ganger was supposed to be our guest on last Saturday's show, and hopefully we'll be able to get him here real soon back on the show to talk about his world record. I'm hoping maybe this next Saturday. I'm not too sure yet, so we're kind of in the air about what we're going to have actually going on next Saturday, but we'll have another great show definitely for you then as well too. And also we will make sure that you all know about our special Halloween Hangout live stream coming up on Halloween evening at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That'll be 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to hang out and watch the original 1960 classic version of The Little Shop of Horrors. I love The Little Shop of Horrors. It's one of my favorite shows. This one's a little bit different than the one that y'all might be familiar with as far as the 1980s version of Little Shop of Horrors with Steve Martin and all of them as well. So, and Rick Moranis, and that it's really fun. It's really cool. It's the original, and it's also a public domain movie. So that means that we can watch it right here on our channel. We've been doing this now for about 5 or 6 years now. It's been really fun. So I hope all of you come and join with us for that special Halloween hangout. We're going to have some discussion and all of that. And our facilitator, Jay, gave me a great suggestion this last week. So I think we're going to try to work on this as well, too. So if you're dressing up and you're hanging out and you're handing out treats to the kids and all of that sort of stuff, or if you've got some kids or anything like that you'd like to submit some photos of you and your costumes and all of that. Or what I'm also going to do is I will share our live stream link with everybody on that evening, and you guys can come and join with me maybe and show off your costumes and all that too as well, live on the show with us too. So definitely look forward to that. We'll also, after we have our discussion after the movie as well, we will, if you want to still hang around, watch a version of the theatrical version of The Little Shop of Horrors as well too. There's a really great version that's done by a San Jose theatrical company that they did many years ago back with Hal Linden from an old show on in the 80s and all of that. He was a really famous actor and all of that back then. He did a show called Barney back in the day. I remember that when I was little, watching that on reruns and everything too. So really fun to see him and the other cast members put on this just really great theatrical version that is more like the one that's in the movie that everybody's familiar with too. So definitely come and hang out with us for our special Halloween hangout live stream. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. That's coming up here just in a couple of weeks too. So yeah, really, really fun. And everybody too, we do, again, like I said, we are here both Saturdays and Sundays. We have our Sunday edition tomorrow. I want to let everybody know about now. Tomorrow is our third Sunday of the month, and every third Sunday of the month, we have a great monthly gardening book club that we put on each and every month. It's been going great this year. It's been one of the more fun things that we've been able to do here on our show over this last season. So tomorrow we are going to welcome to the show again, she's back again, Ashley Thomas, the Mocha Gardener, and we're going to be talking all about her book, How to Become a Gardener. Find Empowerment in Creating Your Own Food Security. This is such a great book. Ashley is just such a great person, and I love having conversations with her. It's going to be really great to get together too. We'll have live on the show with us our good friend Mark Roche Colbert. He's going to be our co-host, of course, for the monthly gardening book club. So me and him will get a great chance to talk with Ashley all about this great book and to catch up with Mark and all the things that he's got growing in the garden as well too. So we got a lot of great stuff coming up. We got lots and lots of great guests coming up for future shows and everything like that. So definitely be sure to keep an eye out on our homepage on the YouTube channel here, The Urban Gardener, and make sure that you're keeping up with all of our upcoming live streams. We've got some, like I said, we've got some really, really great guests coming up. So, all right, let's see who we got joining in with us today. Want to make sure we say hi to everybody. Of course, right at the top of the show, we've got to say hi to our facilitator, Jay Dixon. Thank you so much for joining with us here from Midwestern Ontario, Canada. Keep an eye out in our comments here too. Jay puts in a lot of great information and links as we are talking and going along throughout the show. So definitely check that out as well too. We also got joining with us again, Rick joining us from the future, joining us from Australia. We got Rick joining with us. Thank you so much for getting up with us nice and early, Rick. Nice and early in the future to join with us there. We've got Janet Potter joining with us as well too. Good afternoon, Janet. Great to see you. We got Connie Davison joining with us. Great to have you here with us on the show. Oh, and it looks like we've got our good friend Christopher Bransdahl. We'll have him back on the show coming up here as well too real soon. We'll talk about that just a little bit later. But good evening, Christopher, joining with us from Norway. Again, all of you over in Europe there. Joining with us later in the evening. It's really great to have you here with us too. So, and looks like we've got Big Will Dog in the soil joining with us. Great to have you there. It looks like, like that he says, welcome or hello. And he's got a new name to go with his newly launched channel. Big Will Dog's putting on a channel. We're gonna have to go check that out. I'm sure we can get Jay to drop us a link there in the comments, and we can go and check out Big Will Dog's channel and give him a subscribe and show him some support. He's such a great viewer of ours. So thank you, Big Will Dog, for joining in with us there. It's so awesome to have you here. Right on. Let's see here. We got Pam joining with us as well too. Says, I saw you greeting Nate. Yeah. I'm always, as I'm preparing for our live show here, I'm always hanging out with Nate in his live stream as I'm getting things ready and getting everything set up here for our show too. It's always great to catch up with him. And it's also really cool that his live stream is just before ours gets started and everything as well too. And we'll be having Nate back on the show here real soon too. I believe it'll be November 3rd. We'll be talking about that more so coming up as well too. We're going to have him on one of our Sunday edition shows, joining with us for a round table, because we're inviting back and really lucky to have back with us Mark Valencia from Self-Sufficient Me over in Australia. One of the most popular garden shows on YouTube. Mark is just such a great human being, so fun to talk with when we had him on the show earlier this year. So it's going to be really fun to have him back with us again too. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation as well too. Looks like we've got Adam. Great to see you joining with us there. He says he's just getting home from work. Awesome, Adam. Really great to see you here on the show. And I look forward to seeing just a little bit later today. Adam, we'll be getting together and hanging out after the show today. Adam lives just right up the road from me here. So it's great to be able to hang out with him too. So awesome. Looks like we got Jersey Girl joining the show. Tons of awesome people joining with us today. I'm so glad to have you all here with me, and all of us as well too. We've got a great show ahead for you here today. Like I said, we've got some great guests, so you want to stick around and hang out with us here to have these great conversations here. And we'll be back right in a moment here to meet our very first guest today. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
Hi everyone, this is Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop here with this week's trivia question. Which U.S. state produces the most sweet potatoes? A. Texas, B. California, C. North Carolina, or D. Idaho? We'll be back with the answer a little later in the show.
All right, all right. Do y'all have a guess on what the answer is to Sarah's trivia question today? Definitely jump into our comments, let us know there, and we'll find out the answer here in just a little bit on the show. And if you can, definitely, like I said, there's a link down below to check out Sarah's Seed Shop, sarahseedshop.com, and get some great essential garden seeds for your garden as you're planning your new garden this next season. You'll want to get some of those essential seeds, and she's got such a great deal there too. You definitely don't want to miss out on some of the great deals that she has for her seeds. You'll get a ton of seeds at a price that you just can't beat anywhere. There's no seed company out there offering seeds at the price that she is. So definitely go and check that out as well too. And lots and lots of things growing on in the garden right now. And like you saw at the beginning of the show there in our opening clip, I've been pulling out potatoes and trying to get things cleaned up around the garden, because right now the weather is finally changing here, and we got all of my leaves are starting to finally fall off of our trees here too. So I got to get all of our garden beds ready so that we can tuck a lot of them in with all of our leaf mulch and all of that as well too, to make sure that everything's going great and ready for us this next season when we get growing in some of the our next season. And of course, we've got tons of things still coming out of the garden. We've got some things that are really starting to get growing too for our fall season. I've got tons of greens that are starting to pop up everywhere, because as I mentioned, I like to save a couple of my plants every year, let them grow up and produce seed, and then I let a lot of that seed just kind of fall and go, and I'll toss a little bit in there as well too when it's ready, to make sure that we got all of our great salad greens growing as well too. So we got lots of things growing on. Let me know what you've got growing on in our comments there as well too. And like I said, if you got any questions for our guests, definitely jump into the chat there as well too, as we'll be looking out for those two here. So all right, everybody, it's time to see who we are following this week.
Are you following me? Are you following me, dude?
All right. Today we got joining us on the show, we've got Yasmin. Yaz joining us from MCR Urban Gardener out of the UK. Can you hear me, Yaz?
I can hear you. Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. It's great to have you here today. Thanks for joining with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. Excellent. So as I mentioned, you're gardening out of the UK. I will also mention too, is I was noticing, and I think this is where I found you from, was we've had Jason from the Cloud Gardener on our show a couple of different times. In fact, we'll have him back on the show here pretty soon as well too, because he just went on a really great trip we've got to talk all about. So that's what I think where I found you there too, and seeing all of these just great things you guys are growing out of these alleyways up there. And in what city again is that? Is it Manchester?
So I'm in Manchester. So that's what the
Yes.
MCR stands for. It's shorthand.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. If that's what that was for sure. MCR Urban Gardener. I love it. I'm the urban gardener here in the States. You're the urban gardener in the UK. How about that?
And I think what most people don't know is I'm actually from the States. So I grew up in Southern California and moved here 10 years ago. So I'm not taking your name, I promise. We can be on our current separate countries and urban gardener.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. So you only moved there 10 years ago. That's great. Yeah, yeah. You've really grown into the accent too.
I know a lot of people have said that, which is weird, but yeah, thanks.
I think it probably just happens, right?
Yeah, I spend all my time around people who have different accents, and you just sort of, I don't know, I guess you just kind of copy it. But here, everyone says I sound really American, and in the States, everyone says I sound really British. So I think no matter what, no one knows really where I'm from.
That's great. Right on, right on. So, real quick here, just tell us a little bit more about yourself. Of course, you said you just moved from the States 10 years ago, but tell us a little bit more about your how you got started gardening and all of that.
Yeah, so I didn't grow up gardening. My parents loved it. I grew up in Southern California, so you could grow virtually everything under the sun really well. And I just thought it was a weird old people hobby, and that's honestly for a lot of my youth what I thought it was. And then I moved here to the UK, and I bought this house, and it was so dirty outside, and we just had no access to green space, and there was just like fly tipping, so it's like dumped trash that people just drive around and dump it. And I didn't want that anymore. And so a neighbor said, "Hey, do you want to help clean up?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And I didn't actually think anyone would ever do it. So I agreed, thinking we just, never talk about it again. And yeah, here we are almost 7 years later from when we started. And we have this amazing garden in the back of our alleyway. So for anyone who's not familiar with kind of North UK housing, it's terraced housing, which is houses that are all connected in really long rows. So my road has about 40 houses on each side, and we just have a passageway through, and that's what we've turned into a growing space.
Right on. Yeah, yeah. So it just started as a kind of a cleanup project and then turned into the really amazing garden, huh?
Yeah, so I think when it's like full of trash, you can't really appreciate that it actually is a really nice space to have as a garden. And so once it was clean, we were like, oh, we could actually utilize the space, and it doesn't have to just keep getting full of what
Yeah.
people want to dump.
Yeah, and the way and like you said, the way the houses are set up and everything, it's just a really great opportunity for people to really improve their spaces and to be able to grow things and all of that too in such a crowded kind of city, right? I mean, these alleyways are kind of really a great opportunity.
Absolutely. We don't really have any like gardens or yards. So I think my yard is about 10 foot by 8 foot. So like that's tiny compared to what most people have in kind of more rural settings or different countries. So it was really important to find space wherever we could. And the alleyway was the place we found. And actually, it's a really easy space to grow in, which I know sounds really weird. But we don't have to grow in the ground. We grow exclusively in like pots or big raised beds that we built, but it kind of has its own microclimate, which makes it really interesting and maybe not always easy, but yeah, it is interesting, and we have found a lot of things that work really well in this space.
Yeah, yeah. And so you also said that you didn't really have any previous gardening experience?
No, none, not at all. I don't think I ever gardened before doing this. And what I became really passionate about was I didn't know anything about growing, but I knew I wanted some form of outdoor space. And it was in 2017 when we started, and I was like desperate for it, but didn't really know what to do. So I just started growing vegetables to see what would happen.
Yeah.
Had literally no clue what I was doing. Like you could see it looking than me. And yeah, it ended up working really well, and growing fruit and veg is like my passion. Like it's my favorite part of it. but you can still grow that in the middle of a really big, busy city.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I myself grow in alleyways. We have a couple of different alleyways that we live on here. They kind of like our blocks broken up with one that goes this way and then another one that kind of tees up. And I live right along those. So I was actually inspired many years ago by my neighbor who lives across the way. He'd been growing in his back of his house, the back part of the alleyway there for many, many years before I moved here. And I came and moved here with just learning to start growing my own food. I've always grown plants. I've always had house plants. I've always had a passion for plants since I was a little kid. But I had just, found my passion for food gardening just before I moved here. And so I was starting with this little back patio space I had, doing pots and elevated raised beds and that sort of stuff. But then I noticed my neighbor across the way growing all of his, he was growing these, 15, 16-foot tall Mexican corn with tomato plants and cucumbers and all this sort of stuff growing there. And it was just so really inspiring to me that I and you know how when our passion for gardening really kicks in, we want to take up and grow as much as we can. I took up the rest of the alleyway space all the way around.
I mean, it's so nice though when you can see an example of something that works that you would have maybe never considered, or like just that little bit of inspiration, and then you can run with it in your own way. And people don't it's sometimes hard to think creatively when you're not used to seeing those spaces and how you
Yeah.
can utilize them. But now I imagine for you as well, like it's so hard to imagine not having growing
Yeah.
like stuff growing in that space.
Exactly. And that's really what it is too. When you're limited with space, you have to, use your imagination. You have to really think about what the possibilities could be, and I think that's one of the main inspirations for when I started my channel many years ago was the fact that, we were utilizing these unique spaces, and I had found inspiration from other people and all that, and just wanted to share that sort of thing. One of the other things we do too is grow up on the top of this carport rooftop.
Amazing.
So we had this garden up there, pepper garden, that we were growing in containers and everything too. So that, is, in itself is kind of inspiring for other people to get started growing and finding ways to utilize their small spaces.
I think, yeah, absolutely. Like I don't know how I would have grown if someone hadn't suggested we clean the alley and we put a plant back
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Because it's just so hard to think of these like great ideas when you don't have any experience. And it's incredible because now I feel so experienced and like I've literally learned everything off of like YouTube and Instagram and Google. And
Yeah.
I'm not a horticulturalist by any means, but I'm very much a gardener. And like it's really important to me that we keep gardening accessible for everyone. So regardless of where they live, and if they're growing on top of a car parking space or they're growing in an alleyway or they have a full allotment, like everyone is still a gardener in that sense. And everyone deserves to feel like it's their space.
Have you thought about going out and getting yourself an allotment?
I did. So started the alleyway project in 2017, and then in 2021, I got an allotment.
You
so
do have one. Okay.
Yeah, so it is a smaller allotment space than like the average one. It's called a quarter plot, but it's still plenty. It keeps me really busy. But I think it's kind of more like what I grow because it's what I really like to eat or what I really like to grow. Whereas in the alleyway, it's a lot more community based and it's a little bit about everyone. So I like having my selfish space and then my community space as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I've done some community gardening here in the States, we call it, but I've done some of that. And I actually really just like going more so now, just going and visiting these community gardens and talking with all the gardeners and all that sort of stuff, because I do have a lot of things growing on. So it's just a bit more space than what I can handle.
Yeah, it's
But
really hard work doing a community garden. And I think I didn't quite realize that when I started.
Mhm.
And I love it. And it's really rewarding. And at the same time, it's like you're managing more than just your plants. So like most
Yeah.
gardeners just have to worry about their plants and the pests and the animals around them. And we have to kind of manage like neighborhood politics and how different people work together and what different
Oh,
people
yeah.
like and how you kind of
Mhm.
like mesh all of these things together. And I think yeah, there's challenges and it's not always easy, but people are so lovely and people love doing it. And I think that makes it all really worth it in the end.
Yeah, that's for sure. And again, too, like you're saying, is bringing a community together, in these sort of spaces. Whether it's the alleyway spaces, because I get a lot of people who just walk through, and neighbors and all of that who come here just to walk their dogs or to ride through the alleyway, just because we have basically a living alleyway, that's people can really enjoy. And it's again that connection in nature that we can all kind of come around, which is really awesome. I like to call it common ground gardening. It's a great place for us to start all of those essential conversations that we have to have, in a sense, as neighbors, as a community, and all of that. And it's a great place for us to really get together and do that.
I think that's so interesting you say that, because we have so many people who use our alleyway as a walkthrough now, which no one would have ever done before we greened it. Like, no one would have considered walking down because it was quite gross.
Yeah.
But now people use it as like their main thoroughfare. Like, everyone wants to walk their dogs through it. And I think it's really nice because it means people recognize that nature is important to them, and they like recognize that they need that kind of quieter space. We live off a main road, so otherwise you're breathing in just what the cars have to chug out right as you're right next to them. And so I think, yeah, people do really appreciate that space. And like you say, it brings everyone together.
Yeah, yeah. Have you had anybody, I mean, you guys have got your alleyway, but I'm sure there's tons of these alleyways all throughout the city and all of that. Is this something that other people are starting to implement or do themselves to change their alleyways?
Yeah, definitely. I think there were a few alleyways before us, so kind of alleyways that have done it for 20, 30 years, but that's only one or two across the city that I knew of. We started ours, and then the alleyway next to us started the year after. And then I think during COVID, so 2020, when that kicked off, a lot of people started alleyway gardening because we don't have yards, and we were expected to spend if we wanted to be around family members, we had to be outside. So a lot of people, I think, realized, right, we need social interaction and we need green space. Like, now is the time to do it. And it's just really, it's really gone off. And you mentioned Jason earlier, the cloud gardener. And so my alleyway and many of the other alleyways were kind of his inspiration for Tatton Flower Show in 2023. And yeah, like, what I found really interesting is that people just really liked it when they saw it in person, and people who were like, I've never seen an alleyway be a green space before, and everyone just kind of was really excited by it. And my favorite thing now is I get messages and emails off people who have done it themselves and who have kind of taken that idea and grown with it, and that's really nice.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see here. We have a question. Well, I think how's growing in the alley fostered communication between neighbors?
It's gone from 0 to 100. So we had no communication. I hadn't known any of my neighbors before this. And now we cat sit for each other, and we have barbecues, and we have pizza parties, and yeah, we try to do a lot of community things together. And friendships have formed. And I think, not everyone's involved, and I think that's important as well. Like, and not every house has to be involved. So we have 80 households on our alleyway. So if every house was involved, it actually would be quite a lot. But we have about 10 households who help out pretty regularly, or like more often than not. And so those are the relationships that have fostered the most. But obviously other people do pop in and out as they come around.
Yeah. That's a really, inspiring thing. And I think maybe, more emphasis on that sort of thing too, as we were talking about bringing community together. I mean, we live, and it's no different for us here, in the States and all of that, is that we just live next to each other and go about our lives, and we're just doing things and whatever's going on. But having this space that brings us together, that's even more localized than, say, the park that's down the road or something like that. I mean, something that's just right in the middle of our neighborhood really helps us connect with those neighbors who are just right there next to us.
And it's really taken us back to, I guess, kind of like the classic neighborhood vibe, where you knock on your neighbor's door for a cup of sugar, or you knock on your neighbor's door for, those little things that you can help each other out with. And you don't have that otherwise. And I've never lived somewhere before doing this, where we did do that, because otherwise you might wave hello, but you didn't really get to know people. You didn't really get to build that relationship with them. And so for me, as much as I love nature and it's really increased like biodiversity, and it has really improved that kind of aspect of it, like the sense of community and social cohesion has probably increased the most. And I think demographically for where I live, it's even more important. So a lot of people who live on my road are refugees or live in like emergency housing. So they've been homeless. And so it's people who maybe don't feel a lot of stability in their life. And so giving them this space where it is warm and welcome and it is their community, like, I think it really helps people feel grounded and welcome and like a part of everything.
Yeah, that is, really so true. And I think that's really a great thing about that is, again, creating this welcoming space that people can come to. Like you said, not every person on your block really can participate. There'd be more than you need doing that for the garden, but it's a great space for everyone else to be able to come through and feel welcomed and feel a part of your community. I mean, that's one of the things that's just so inspiring about that.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. We had an end of summer pizza party a few weeks ago, and we made pizzas in like one of those pizza ovens, and people got to put their own toppings on, and we just hung out, and it just really shows that gardening is more than, I guess, what people can think it is. And I think sometimes people are intimidated when I knock on doors and I'm like, hey, come out into the garden. And I think people find it so intimidating because they don't know what to do. And I'm like, no, it's not about that. Like, just come out, and over time you'll start learning and like you'll start absorbing information. But you don't have to know everything from day one. You just see how it goes.
Yeah. Just find some inspiration to find that inner green thumb that I know we all have. We just have to have the opportunity to discover it, just like you, with cleaning the alleyway and moving into creating this garden space. It was something you didn't even know that you had in you until that happened, right?
Absolutely. I would have never thought like 10 years ago, this is what I would be doing in my free time. I genuinely would have thought I'd be doing almost anything else. But yeah, it's been great. And I think it's important to like make sure people know there are challenges, and it's not perfect and it's not always easy, because I think sometimes people start their own and then an issue happens and then they think, oh, well, no one else has this problem, so now it's not worth me continuing. But like plants have died, things have dried out, people have stolen stuff, but we move on. It's fine.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to ask you about the types of issues here. We had another question. He was like, do you have any issues with dogs? Right. Or any other sorts of things, pests, cats, all of that as well, right?
I think the cats are our biggest issue. So again, for people who don't know, because I didn't before I moved here, people in the UK almost exclusively have outdoor cats. So there are cats everywhere, which means cats are pooing just about everywhere they can. So anywhere we grow food, we now have to keep it covered with netting just to make sure the cats don't use it as a big litter tray. We don't really have an issue with dogs, to be honest. I think because everything's in raised beds, everything's quite high up off the ground, so dogs don't really jump up into things. I think when you grow in containers, we forget how much more water it requires. Because it's not getting soaked in the same way. And so, you have 2 days without rain, which for Manchester is quite generous. I will say we have a lot of rain. But then you have to be out there watering because things do dry out really fast. And the other, it's quite a unique problem to have, and I bet not a lot of people have to deal with this, but one side of the alleyway is south facing and one side is north facing. So it means one side gets really hot, especially because it's brick walls. It gets really, really hot. And the other side is virtually shaded the whole day. And so it took a lot of learning about different plants and what thrives where and how you do it. Because I had lettuce bolting for the first 2 years. I was like, I can't figure out why I can't grow lettuce. Because I put it directly in the hottest sun all summer.
Put it on the other side of the alleyway and find more success, right?
Exactly. And so those kind of learning curves came. And we have a fig tree. It's massive. It's about 8 foot tall. It grows in it's basically just a bag, like it's nothing fancy, but it grows against the south facing brick wall. And so it's just really hot. And we had about 3 or 4 kilos of figs this year, so quite a substantial
Wow.
amount of
Yeah,
figs.
I love my fig trees, and again too, they're those types that, like you said, you can grow them in almost anything. They're just I mean, some varieties are very hardy for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And people, yeah, people love that. Like people love to just, sometimes it's annoying when people walk past and grab everything and you're like, you don't live here, please, keep it for the residents first. But, it's also
yeah,
nice when we do harvest stuff. I just get to walk around and knock on doors and give it to people, or send a message out to a group chat and say, who wants X or Y? Like we have loads of tomatoes or loads of lettuce,
yeah.
and people just come and get it.
Yeah, that is kind of one of the issues or parts of having an alleyway garden. Same for me here is that I've got people who walk through and they'll be grabbing things. I remember years ago when I finally got my first watermelon to grow. I had this big, beautiful watermelon
Oh,
growing
yeah.
out in the back alleyway, and I just knew I was like, oh, I gotta, try to keep it as covered as I possibly could and everything. And then one day I walked out there and that thing was gone.
No.
And the only problem with that though too is that whoever took it, they took an unripe watermelon too. So it wasn't even ready to be picked yet. So I
Oh,
mean, bad
it's
on
just a
them, I
waste.
suppose. Just a waste for sure. But again, it does come with that sort of, growing scenario that you got to deal with, people grabbing things as they do. So I try not to really worry too much about the things I've got in my more public parts of my
Yeah.
garden spaces. It's just that's going to happen. So I like, I try to make sure I'm growing most all of like the cherry tomatoes out there and that stuff. So there's tons of them and people
Yeah.
can just kind of pick them as they go along and all of that too, without having to worry about losing too much of my crops.
I'm exactly the same. Like, try to grow things where I won't be absolutely devastated if it goes.
Mhm.
And so at my allotment, I grow the things that are
Mm,
slightly more
important
precious
for
to
you.
me, that I care about
Yeah.
a little bit more.
Yeah.
And people, for the most part, have been really respectful of it. But yeah, it happens, and people do just grab and go. But I haven't
Yeah.
grown a watermelon, so I've not experienced that devastation.
Right. And then also as well too, though, like you're saying, there's times where you do have an abundance of things. And there's times I'll have people who are walking through the alleyway and I'm like, hey, you guys want some of this? And then I'll start picking things for them and leave them with like they're walking out of my alleyway with a whole
Yeah.
bunch of stuff in their arms. So that does happen as well too.
They were like, I thought we were just gonna walk the dog. I didn't think we were going shopping. Like,
Right, exactly. Let's see here. We had a question here for you too. Was there any issues to get official permission to use this alley for community gardening? Was this
so in
something that you had to get?
Manchester, the city council is really supportive of this. So they don't require any like official permission, but what they do suggest is you contact them for support, because they do offer us funding. So they do give us some money towards maintaining this and doing this, which is really helpful. And also it just gives us a chance to air any problems, because we have had issues with I can't even think about what I would have called it in the States, but antisocial behavior. So people just like, misbehaving,
Yeah,
or doing things they shouldn't be doing. And they're really helpful in just like assisting and stopping any problems before they start, but also, yeah, giving us money, which is really important. Um,
right.
and we're also very fortunate that all of the compost bins, like the green bins that go every week that get collected, they actually create compost, and so we get to claim a ton a year from our city council.
Oh wow.
So it
Nice.
means it's, again, like another cost we don't have to pay for, but it's basically as local as you can get, and it's literally our
Mhm.
own food waste coming back to us, which is great.
Yeah, it just makes so much sense. You're out doing the work to create, basically a beautification project for the city.
Yeah.
So it really makes a lot of sense that they would help support that.
Absolutely. And I know some people have said they've had issues with their city councils, like not being as supportive, but it's not been my experience at all. I found them so great. And it's really nice to not feel like I have to ask for permission before doing everything, because otherwise I feel like I'd just end up doing nothing. But yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Right on, right on. So real quick before we get going, I wanted to ask you a little bit about gardening itself, though, too, because again, I guess in some way, this is a project that got you started and got you going. What are some of your favorite things to grow in your alleyway? What are some of those?
We have once grown a pumpkin in the alleyway in a
Oh,
grow
nice.
bag, like in a
Uh,
small grow bag. And it
yeah,
was like
yeah,
a small pumpkin, it wasn't huge, but it made the nicest pumpkin pie. And so even though I live in the UK, I still do a Thanksgiving dinner every year. So I use that pumpkin to make pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving, and that was so nice. And we've had a lot of success with things like celery and we've done garlic, maybe not the most successful, but I do really enjoy growing garlic. Um, and cucumbers have done really well, and also herbs. Like we have herbs
yeah.
everywhere and they really thrive. And I think that's something that someone could cut back as much as they want and it'll basically keep growing.
Yeah.
So that those really resilient edible plants are really nice as well.
Excellent, excellent. Any of your least favorites? Any-
Um,
Anything you have trouble with? You just might, anything you've given up on?
Yeah, I find zucchini or courgette in the alleyway just impossible because we have so many slugs. Like it is
Oh,
endless slugs.
yes.
Um,
Same here, same here.
yeah, I've given up. I've tried everything, and the slugs just they can get to that, and they'll leave everything else alone. So I don't really bother with zucchini in the alleyway anymore. Um, and I think otherwise, I also kind of don't really do any big tomato varieties anymore. I keep to the
Yeah.
small ones, and that's for two reasons. One, like you said, people walk away, but also like our summer's quite short and things don't ripen in time, and so then I end up with blight just getting on everything. So
Yeah.
I've kind of stopped doing those big ones and just the smaller ones that ripen fast and people can take quickly. But
Yeah, yeah, and very similar also to what you were saying about the pumpkin and all that too, is that you're growing in containers, and unless you got really large containers, some of those larger fruits, don't do as well, so it's always best to kind of go with the smaller varieties for sure. That's one of my biggest recommendations for people in small space gardening.
absolutely, and they're still they taste as good and they look as good.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you're not losing out, I promise.
Right on, right on. Well, before we let you go here, do you got any advice or tips for newer gardeners?
I think honestly, don't be afraid to fail. Just see how it goes. Throw things in, figure it out, and honestly, Google everything because I that is what I've done, and it's been really successful. So,
Yeah.
get started and enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, go find some great gardeners on YouTube and just start, getting to, get to learn about some things and all of that too. It's just, yeah, just get out there and grow. Just do it.
Absolutely, that's it.
That's right. Well, awesome to talk with you today. It was really great. We'll have to
Thank
have you
you.
back on sometime, and I really appreciate you sharing with us all about your alleyway gardening.
Thank you so much, and good luck to you in your alleyway garden.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Yaz.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey, gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits.
The answer to this week's trivia question is C. North Carolina produces so many sweet potatoes that the sweet potato is actually their state vegetable. Other top sweet potato producing states include Texas, California, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Thanks for watching. Head over to Sarah's Seed Shop where you can find garden seeds at unbeatable prices. Enjoy the rest of the show and have a great day.
All right, all right. Did you get that question right? I was kind of wondering myself too. I don't think I didn't go with Idaho, which I was thinking that was the trick part of the question for sure. But I think my first initial guess was Texas. I don't know why, but North Carolina being the answer there. And again, everybody definitely go and check out the link below to Sarah's Seed Shop at sarahseedshop.com and get some really great seeds from her for your next year's garden for sure. And again, thank you so much to Yasmin for joining with us today here on the show. It was really great to talk with her and learn all about their alleyway gardens there in the UK. Lots of great stuff and fun things to be able to grow in some of these spaces that we don't necessarily think about. Let's see here. Oh, Rick says, I got that one wrong. Yeah, I got it wrong too. And Cody says, yeah, I guessed it. Right on. Right on. That's really awesome, everybody. Thanks for participating today. And again, thanks to Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop for doing our trivia questions. Awesome. Awesome. Right on. Well, lots and lots of things growing on here today. Let's go ahead and let's start a conversation with our featured guest today.
You never know when you might learn something, and that's what this is about for me. These are people that I admire. Please welcome my next guest.
So when I was down at the National Heirloom Exposition just a few weeks back here in last September, got to see so many just awesome people. They have really great speakers and people, talking and discussing about all sorts of really great things. And joining our good friend John Kohler on his talk this year was Dr. Jeffrey Pierce talking about gardening and lifestyle medicine. And I just found his discussion and talk just so fascinating. And I was just like, we've got to have him on the show. So real quick here, I'm going to play you a real quick little clip from that discussion.
I think the people who make the pills are probably pretty happy with the status quo, and hospitals might be happy with the status quo, and certainly the junk food industry is happy with the status quo, right? But we got to do better than that. And so a bunch of docs and others got together in 2004 and created the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and said, wait a second, if so much about these chronic illnesses depends on what we do every day, what did I choose to eat for breakfast? Was I indoors all the day sitting down, or am I getting up and moving around? Did I get good sleep last night, or did I stay up watching like the 4th episode in a row of Game of Thrones or whatever it is? And how all those things add up. And if we can address that, then a lot of these chronic conditions are preventable and they're treatable, and they're actually even reversible, which is something that we never talked about when I was in med school over 20 years ago. Type 2 diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, heart disease is now largely reversible, which is an amazing change compared to what we were learning 20 years ago. So a nice metaphor is sort of like, if my hand is sore because every day I hit it with this hammer, what I used to do before I became a lifestyle medicine doc was I would just prescribe a really nice thick padded glove so I could just keep hitting my hand with a hammer. But now with lifestyle medicine, I've learned that we should probably actually just put the hammer down, and you don't need the extra thick glove to protect your hand.
Right on, right on. It was, like I said, really great conversation. So let's welcome to the show Dr. Jeffrey Pierce. Thank you so much, Jeff, for joining with us today.
Thank you very much for having me. My pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. Again, like I was saying there too, is that I really enjoyed this discussion you had so much. We just had to have you on the show to talk all about it. I don't think it's something that we think about as much when we're talking about gardening, is really kind of the health benefits of all of this activity that we're doing.
For sure. Yeah, certainly not why most people get into gardening, but it turns out that so many different parts of gardening are really good for us as individuals and also really good for whole communities.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So before we really get digging into all of this really great stuff, how about give you just a moment there to kind of introduce yourself and let everybody know a little bit more about you?
Sure. All right. So I'm originally from South Texas and now live in Northern California for the last 20 or so years. And I trained as a family medicine doctor. So learning everything from delivering babies all the way to helping people on the last days of life and everything in between. And then more recently, a handful of years ago, I also became boarded in something called lifestyle medicine, which is a newer branch of medicine that was started by as the American College of Lifestyle Medicine back in 2004. And there, just sort of like that clip you showed, there's really a focus on what do we do day in and day out, looking at our healthy habits, and we'll launch into it more, I'm sure, here during the interview. But what do we do day in and day out, and how much that really, really contributes to whether or not we're going to develop diabetes and whether or not we're going to have a heart attack at age 50 and all these sorts of things. And so that's what I do with medicine. And at home here in Northern California, we have turned our sort of just urban sized, normal size plot into a bit of a jungle of fruit and veg, and we
Yeah.
try to just grow most of our fruit and veg for our family.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, you sent me a few pictures to share with everybody about that one. It seems how you mentioned it. Let's just get through those real quick and talk about that because I love this kind of transformation that you did with your home too there, and just taking these spaces that we all got in our houses and all of that and turn them into some really wonderful gardens. So I'll pop them up and maybe you can just explain the space there just a little bit here. So we start with this one here.
Sure. Yep. So 10 years ago, we moved into our house, and it was fairly a clean slate. There was some grass and some tree stumps, and some not much of anything. And then 10 years later, we sort of turned that area into something more beautiful and more productive, and something that keeps us busy every day by doing a lot of vegetables, both annual and perennial vegetables, but then tons of fruit. And so there was like a big nectar plum tree, which was there in the middle, which is that hybrid of a nectarine and a plum. And here's another view of a different section of the backyard. It had some derelict beds that we moved around, and this same view 10 years later now looks like this. And you'll see a grape that's a Zinfandel and some wild fennel and some brassicas and whatnot, filling that space up.
Yeah, yeah. This one I think I like the most here. This is really cool transformation of a space right here. I love this one. You just
Okay,
have this.
yeah. So yeah, that was a, a carport that we weren't really using for all that much. And so a handful of years ago, I got permission from my beautiful wife to turn that into a bit of a greenhouse. And so we kept the same structure, but put some polycarbonate and whatnot, and some of those automatic window openers, etc. And now it allows us to get away with some things that we wouldn't otherwise get away with in our kind of cold and wet winters here in Northern California. So some tropicals and semi-tropicals.
Yeah, yeah, lots of great stuff. And you started in that one picture, you had some beds that were already there. So, and then you just kind of, from what I can tell in the pictures though, too, it just seems like you got some just really just things growing just as like almost like a food forest style, right?
Mhm. Yeah. 10 years ago, I didn't know anything about growing. I'd done some cherry tomatoes and some peppers when I was a kid with my folks. That was cool down in South Texas, but that was about it as far as growing food. But it was all my wife. She had been growing her own food for years before I met her, and she said, "This is what we're going to do," and I said, "Yes, ma'am." And I'm so glad that I listened to her and that we've worked in this project together. And now, instead of some weedy grass that needs to be mowed, we can pretty much pick fresh fruit pretty much 365 days of the year, and certainly vegetables as well. Part of that's just living in a really Mediterranean climate that lets us get away with that, but also being careful with what we have chosen to plant and where to fit things in. And it's just, we're really thankful for the ability to be able to eat from our garden multiple times a day all throughout the year. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, you're growing out of, I believe, Santa Rosa, right?
Yeah, so about an hour north of San Francisco, and we are zone 9B, more or less where our house is. And so, it'll get into the mid to upper 20s a little bit during the winter. And we get frosts on our window shield most days or many days of the winter. So we can't just have like a papaya tree in the middle, like maybe you could in South Florida or something like that. But yeah, we get away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. With, again, too, being in a good climate there, you got a lot of options for things that you can grow for sure.
Yeah.
Right. And okay. So again, so you kind of like telling us, so you didn't really have any gardening experience before 10 years ago. That's been quite an adventure then, right?
Yeah. I a lot of it was just learning on the ground with my wife's tutelage, if you will. And then so part of my work as a physician is helping train young family doctors in their residency on labor and delivery. So we deliver babies, do C-sections and things like that together. And that is unfortunately over an hour away for my commute. Thankfully, I don't have to do it all that often, but it has given me a lot of opportunity to listen to podcasts. And
Yeah.
so listening to things like Gardener's Question Time from the BBC, and Garden Nerd by Christy Rahomian down in SoCal, and some others over the years, Epic Gardening and all that kind of stuff. I've had hours and hours of just podcast time, and then of course learning on YouTube with all those great channels that are out there.
Right. And so was it in this process of getting this garden started that you started discovering these things with lifestyle medicine, or was this something you were already working into before?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we started the gardening just because it seemed like it's a great way to get food, and certainly we like to eat vegetables and fruits, and so it's so nice to be able to have it just kind of at your fingertips. And I stumbled upon lifestyle medicine around 2020 or so, 2019, and as I learned more about it, got boarded in it, and became a practitioner of it by doing telehealth consultations and also appointments with our patients at the county. I started just connecting the dots, and no one was really talking that I could find was really talking about the health benefits of gardening, at least from the same viewpoint as I was seeing it. But there are so many correlatives between what I was telling patients, what I was suggesting patients to do with lifestyle medicine, and what I was just doing every day naturally, because of what needed to get done in the garden. And so I said, well, man, if I'm realizing all the health aspects of it, and not a lot of people are talking about it. So I wanted to get the word out. And that was part of what encouraged me also to go through the University of California Volunteer Master Gardener program. And I just finished that recently. So I'm a first-year Master Gardener right now. And now I get to tell patients all sorts of things about how to garden in a sustainable and healthy way.
Yeah, I mean, what a that's really great because it's not something we expect when we go to see our doctor. We're going
Mhm.
there, we're talking with them about whatever those issues are that we're dealing with and all of that. But to have a doctor turn to you and say, "Hey, why don't you start a garden?"
Mhm. Yeah, and of course, most doctor visits are structured at about every 10 to 15 minutes. You need to be turning over the room and seeing a new patient, and there's not much time during that window other than to, you know, sort of put some fires out, manage everything in a real quick. Okay, here you're out of this medicine, so we'll prescribe some more, and oh, you should eat better and you should exercise more and see you again in 6 months or something. Hopefully maybe you can refer them to a dietitian and things like that. But it is so important to not see health through the lens of pills and procedures. And thank goodness for pills and procedures in certain circumstances. I would never recommend starting a garden to somebody who's having a cardiac arrest. But I would say maybe before their cardiac arrest or a couple months after that they should get gardening more.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was one of the things during your talk that really caught me though too, was this explanation you gave about, differences in dealing with, um, acute pains or acute issues versus chronic. You can
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I think modern medicine has done amazing, wonderful things, right? Like if you were an older man or woman not all that long ago and you got pneumonia, that was sort of you're probably on your way out, say goodbye. And now, that can be fixed with about a week's worth of pills, right?
Mhm.
Certainly, when we're doing a C-section, it sure is lovely to be able to have a woman come in and need a C-section in a hurry, give them modern anesthesia so that they're awake and not feeling any pain, get to see their baby and in the moment of birth, and then 2 or 3 days later walk out healthy without infection thanks to some antibiotics, et cetera. And so that's just absolutely wonderful. And I'm so glad I'm living now and not living,
Yeah.
200 years ago or 2000 years
Mhm.
ago for many ways. But lifestyle medicine, I mean, excuse me, but modern medicine hasn't quite gotten it right yet with things like diabetes and heart disease and hypertension and autoimmune disease and even some cancers. There's just like a lot of room to improve it. And for most of these ailments, um, what we do day in and day out has got us in this position. Like maybe we had some genes that made it more
Yeah.
likely we were going to have diabetes in our family. But so much about diabetes, particularly type 2 diabetes, gestational diabetes, et cetera, regardless of what your genes say, it's your epigenetics. It's what you do that turns these genes on and off. And
Right.
so, yeah, if we can focus on this stuff, then we don't have to have a lot of these pills and procedures. And people who are already sick with these conditions are now putting them into remission. Certainly, when I was a med student, we were never told that type 2 diabetes was reversible or that you could put it into remission. It was just like, here, these are the pills. And then when these pills don't work, you add these pills. And then when these pills don't work, you add insulin. And for some
Wow. Yeah.
people, that's what you got to do. But for so many people now, they're like, oh yeah, I used to have diabetes. My A1C, my 3-month sugar average was way high at like 9 or 10. And now it's back to normal. And that's amazing. That's one of the most rewarding things that I do in my job.
Yeah, that's and again too, it's just I don't know. I mean, in some way you talk about like, well, it's one thing to live back in these days, but maybe it's some of those aspects of what life was like back then too that are kind of helpful to understanding some of the things that we could do today. I mean, people used to
Mhm.
live on whole food, natural diets back in those days. We've changed that in our more modern culture, so these kind of work together in a way.
Oh yeah, I mean that's very insightful, Enoch. I mean, certainly we didn't sit as much back when we had to get all the calories basically from growing them ourselves or
Yeah.
getting them maybe at the local market. We were outside in nature and all the health benefits. We know that blood pressure and pulse gets better when you're in nature and all this kind of stuff. We weren't sitting on a commute to work, other than some wagon rides here and there. And so there are a lot of those aspects that were, yes, better than our health. We didn't have these weird lab created foods like Twinkies that could stay unspoiled for 5 years at a time or something like that. But of course they had different challenges like calorie shortages and all sorts of things that were killing people a lot younger than the average age of death now. So I'm not saying we should go back to those times, but I agree with you, Enoch. There are some things situationally that were much better for us then than how we have it now with our modern conveniences all over the place.
Yeah. Somebody's getting into a car there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's what I think is that there's some give and take of certain things. I mean, kind of going back to that idea of, like you said, acute things. It's great to have medicine. It's great to have these things that we need. But then, there are some things that we can be looking at differently when we're looking at some of these other more chronic illnesses.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. So, what are some of those recommendations that you'd have? Say someone is coming in with, they've got the type 2 diabetes as you're talking about and all of that, and they're looking for some more better solutions than the medicine that's not working for them. What would be some of those things that you would you'd be recommending?
Yep. So every patient that I see now who's coming to me with a chronic condition, either they want to prevent one, hey, everyone in my family seems to get diabetes and have a heart attack before they're 65. What can I do to avoid that? Or some people say, hey, I already have this condition and my doc says I need to start insulin. What can I do? And so in lifestyle medicine, we break it down into 6 areas and we say, okay, so in general, we need to be really eating more plants, right? The US guidelines for fruits are just like 1.5 to 2 cups a day, and something like 7% of teens meet that, and maybe 12% of adults meet that. And so we're definitely not getting enough fruits and vegetables. We're not getting enough whole grains. We're not getting enough healthy nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, mushrooms, all these things put together, legumes, especially beans, lentils, all that kind of stuff. And so I would say, let's look at your diet. Let's see how we can get the processed foods out. Let's get the foods out that are high in saturated fat, because those are the ones most correlated with high cholesterol, heart attacks, and some cancers like colon cancer. And those tend to be the things like processed meats, red meats, a lot of the animal products. So so we focus on a plant-based diet. We look at what's your activity level like? Are you like most of us, where it's just really hard to get off the computer and the TV, and work demands that you're sitting down for 9 hours a day and all this kind of stuff? Or how can we get some more movement in there, such as getting in your garden and whatnot? The third out of 6 of these pillars, the third is, what about sleep? Are we getting 5 hours of sleep, or are we getting the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep? And if you're not, what can we do to look at getting a healthier, more restorative sleeping pattern going? Fourth is looking at chronic stress. Say that again.
I said, yeah, sleep is important.
It's so important. And it's, a lot of people in the US are like, I can survive on 5 hours of sleep, and I'm proud of that. And I can sleep when I'm dead and all this kind of stuff. But the research shows really that, poor sleep is also tied with things like dementia, because, when we're asleep, our brain helps to get rid of those amyloid proteins that are part of the problem that you see in Alzheimer's and other dementia. And so sleep is critical. It's actually one of those things I learned, that Guinness Book of World Records took how long someone can stay up straight without sleeping. They've taken that out of, you can't try to get in the Book of World Records for that, because too many people were dying, that it's just so dangerous for your health that they don't even want people to try to do that. And so,
exactly.
So sleep, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's just, as Jersey Girl's saying right here, I can't function without sleep. It's just, if I'm not on a good sleep pattern, man, everything else in my life and everything else is just way out of whack.
Yeah. 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 I hear you, man. I still do night shifts on labor and delivery. You know, babies still come at 3 a.m. And I know the next day, no matter if I got some sleep or even worse, when I don't get any sleep, that the next day is horrible. And one of the reasons, something that I found explained scientifically, is when you get poor sleep, all sorts of things happen. One, your blood sugar can go up more easily. You develop some insulin resistance with poor sleep, and that makes things more prone for diabetes. And then to add to that, the hormones that are associated with how full we get, so our satiety hormone and also our hunger hormone, so these are called leptin and ghrelin, these are a couple hormones, are out of whack. So after a night of bad sleep, you'll notice you're more likely to go to those junk foods. You're more likely to go to those high calorie, high fat, high sugar foods, because your body's like, you know, hey, something was just not right last night. Maybe we should just hunker down, get some extra calories, because we don't know if that's going to happen again, you know, tonight too. And so, yeah, sleep's critical.
Yeah, I was gonna say though too, even with, you know, your profession, you know, I watch some of these medical shows. You know, one of the things that's really a you know, a big point in these shows too is how sleep deprived doctors can be. This is really a common thing in your profession, right?
Yeah, yeah, and the more I have learned about it, you know, it's a balance, right? You're part of our altruistic nature in medicine might be, well, you know, somebody's got to take care of these folks, even if they get sick at midnight.
Yep.
But then there's also balancing it with self-care, right? Because you might be able to help all sorts of people for a few years, staying up, you know, 20 hours a day. But you're
Yeah.
more likely to burn out or die earlier. And then who are you helping after that? Right.
Yep.
And so we got to take, as healthcare providers, we have to take care of ourselves. And the more I'm learning about this, the more I have strived for better balance with all these things between life and work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just
It's
to round
gotta
out
be
those last,
hard.
well,
It's
good.
gotta be hard. I'm sorry, I'm continuing on this, but I'll just this last one though. I says it's just gotta be hard, as you mentioned, though, being, you know, delivering babies. They again, with most other things, maybe we could wait till the next morning or whatever to get in to go see someone or something like that. But when the baby's coming, a baby's coming, right?
Yeah, and I'm lucky to be in a place where there's more than one doctor on call at night, and so you know, we help protect ourselves a little bit and say, hey, look, we got a window. I'm going to catch some Z's real quick and cover for me, please, and vice versa. And so that, you know, those sorts of things are important to work into a work culture when you can, when there's enough human power to do that.
Yeah. Right on. So, what else? I know I was cutting you off there. Was there something else too there that you were trying to get to?
Sure. Yeah. No
I'm
problem. And
sorry.
so we mentioned there's 6 pillars, and we've talked about trying to eat more plant-based, talking about
Yeah.
physical activity. We've talked about sleep. We've talked about we started to talk about chronic stress. So a little bit of
Yeah.
stress in life is good, but chronic stress and keeping our cortisol and other stress hormones high all the time is bad for us. So how can we address that? Avoiding toxins. So clearly things like smoking and vaping and excessive alcohol use, but then, you know, also in the garden, you know, are we spraying everything down with industrial chemicals to make it look picture perfect? Or are we, you know, squashing a couple of slugs with our fingers if we need to, or with our boots, and keeping our food toxin free otherwise? And then lastly, the community aspect, and just like Yasmin was mentioning, your last guest here, the one of the things that she has seen by opening up her garden, her urban alleyway into a gardening scape, has been the improved community. And
Yeah.
that is huge. You know, there's studies, multiple studies that show that tie loneliness and social isolation to increased risk of having a heart attack during the study, decreased health overall, increased dementias and whatnot. And, you know, to the point to where Surgeon General Vivek Murthy has put in trying to end social isolation and loneliness as one of his main campaigns, and showing how really being lonely is as bad as a cigarette habit, as a smoking habit. So those are those 6 areas that
Yeah.
that we look at, because I don't want to just say, hey, you know, eat less fast food and your diabetes should get better if that person happens to also be really socially isolated, staying up until 4 a.m. playing you know, video games on his phone,
Right.
and you know, not getting a workout. And so that's how I address it in a patient. But it's funny how so many of those areas also come up when you happen to be a daily gardener.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, that's what the one thing I like was that connection to that. And again, too, though, like these 6 different things, one or two addressing one or two of them might only be so helpful, right? It's really kind of, you got to kind of look at it all in a sense when it comes to it to really, really make that change in your life, right? That's going to
Yeah.
help.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the things that's got to change is that healthcare providers need longer visits. We got to
Yeah.
step away from that 15-minute model, and so in a lot of these lifestyle medicine visits, like what we have at our group, and I'm sure other groups out there that are doing it, is they're like, hey, you know, 30-minute minimum or a 60-minute visit, and it's that's what you need really to address these things accurately and adequately.
Yeah. So again, too, taking those 6 pillars there and let's connect them to gardening now. I mean, really, I mean, how are we getting and addressing each of these 6 pillars with gardening?
Sure. Well, so maybe I'll say it from like a average day at my house. If I'm not, you know, if I'm not on labor and delivery, and I'm
Yeah.
at home, maybe working from home or whatnot, um, how that ties in using those 6 pillars. So often first thing in the morning, either I'll go for a run or something like that out in nature, or I'll get my workout directly in the garden. And I try to do that early in the day because one of the things that helps with restorative sleep is getting sunlight in our eyes early in the morning. It helps to reset our clocks, and it tells our body, hey, 12 hours from now or so, it's going to be time for bed, right? And so we get outside, we get some natural sunlight on us to reset our clocks. Physical exercise also helps with getting better sleep. And so that's tying into sleep. And it's also giving me the vitamin D, which we know is critical for health, right? And that's just made from our in our skin with exposure to sun. And then I see, okay, well, what am I going to pick from the garden for breakfast today? And so this time of year, here we are in October, and for us, it's what's left of the grapes and figs and apples and pears, and then some weird stuff like we've got Chilean guava and some Arctic kiwi berries, and what else was kind of on the weird side recently? We picked a couple of jujubes about a week ago. So a variety of things, and we love the variety actually because there's a big study called the American Gut Project led by Rob Knight down in Southern California area, which looked at microbiome, so like poop samples, and looking at what sort of bacteria composition, microbiome composition seemed to be the healthiest. And it seemed to come from folks who had the widest variety of fibers, different plant foods in their diet. So we just aim for, you know, not just eating celery 4 times a day as our one type of plant food, right? We want to be able to eat all sorts of things. And so I'll pick a variety of foods from the garden. And that's part of how it helps my health and the health of an average gardener.
Yeah.
With physical activity, you know, if you would have asked me when I was a, you know, college kid, hey, let's go work out, let's go in the garden, I would have thought like, oh man, waste, right? You know, that's just like Yaz said, that you know, that's kind of an old person thing, but really it's a lifelong healthy habit, because primarily from the status. So one, just if you just think about burning calories, it burns about 300 calories per hour, which would be like a nice brisk walk or a hike or something like that, which is what I tell my patients to do, is to go for a walk, go for a hike for their activities. So burning calories, it can be good. It depends on what you're doing. Are you just like walking through and smelling the roses, or are you digging and hauling compost and water and some of these higher intensity things? But then it's just the idea of nudges, right? So we're nudged to get out of our seat, to plant some seedlings, to pick the snails off, to water, to add some compost. Like over weeks, we're getting out of our chairs and out of our homes every day, multiple times a day sometimes, because there's an impetus to do something. Like, with your houseplants, you've got all these beautiful houseplants as well. Just think, I like houseplants, and we've got to water them. We got to see if they need attention, etc. And no one would think that watering a houseplant is a form of activity until you really see just how it's just keeping us busy and up and about. And that is good for us. A study out of Australia showed that just not sitting, just standing, was better for, I think it cut mortality some amount. And so we're certainly doing more than just standing when we're working out in the garden.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you got to hold yourself up, right? So it's got to be a little bit of workout on the muscles and those sort of things. So, and again too, is one of the things I thought fascinating about your talk and all of that too, is making those connections, and especially on that level, that just having a garden just gives us the motivation to actually do something a little bit more than what we usually are. And and again, with all of that activity, that's just again, if you got a big enough garden or you got enough things growing, you're moving around, you got a lot of things to care for. So that's a lot of that's a lot of activity that you're not really accounting for.
Yeah. What I think will be important for folks in general, who are thinking the way that I used to think about it is, well, I got to put on my workout outfit, and then I'm going to go work out, and then I'm going to be done with my workout for the day. And, for one, that's just like 30, 60, 90 minutes of intense exercise, and then you're done. And then if that's your mindset that you've done what you needed to do, and then the rest of the day you can be off, that's not as good as like, okay, it's really beneficial to be up and around all day long. And that's what gardening, especially when you have a bigger plot, can do. And then the fact that if I don't go to the gym today and I was just going to go by myself, I'm not letting anybody down, and there's not a real big consequence if I don't go to the gym today. But if I don't go outside and water my plants on this like 95-degree day or 105-degree day or whatever, like there's going to be serious consequences on stuff that I'd put love and money and time into for weeks and months before that, right? So it's sort of like, it's like having it's not exactly the same, but it's sort of like having a baby, right? You got to feed that baby, even if you're depressed, even if you're tired, even if you don't feel
or something.
Yeah. It's very similar.
Yeah, you got to get out there. You got to care for this stuff, and believe me, I live in a pretty hot area, so there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that everything's keeps growing and keeps producing, so that I can get those get the food benefits of it. But the one thing, like I said, is that you're not thinking about that other benefit, is that you're getting that activity. You're out there doing something.
Yeah, and I like how you said that, because when you look at it that way, when that squirrel digs up that new plant that you planted, or that rat eats that beautiful tomato that you've been waiting for weeks for, or that person walks away with your unripe watermelon from your side garden or front garden, you could look at that as, well, I put all this work in for nothing. But really, when we step back and expand our thought process on that, it's just like, no, I've had benefit every step of the way. I mean, I would have loved to have eaten that beautiful mango that I've been coveting, that I've been trying to grow. But I got exercise, I got love of nature, I got the sense of purpose, I've got all this other stuff along the way. So it's beneficial in many ways.
Yeah. And the one we talk about a lot, more so than some of these other points we're making here too, but I talk a lot about, and I have different guests on where we, the one thing I always find that really seals the deal for gardeners after they, they get growing a couple of seasons in is just how much better they feel mentally too.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
is also another important part of kind of this, I don't know if it's in the 6 pillars, but that's kind of an important part that, that we're kind of, mentally balanced a little bit. And I think the garden just does so much in helping with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think about that mostly in that pillar that where I was mentioning about stress. That's, stress and
Yeah.
mental health in general. And I love when I look at the research that's been done with gardening, as well as just being outdoors in nature. There's just multiple studies that show how it helps with overall sense of well-being, decreased stress, folks with like Alzheimer's disease, how it can decrease their need for psychiatric medications and other things like that. So it's something that, especially as the pandemic helped to point
Mhm.
out to us, that there's a lot of mental stress and depression and loneliness, all this kind of stuff out there. And getting out into the garden by yourself is helpful. Getting out into a community garden or a plot where you're working with other people, getting some sweat equity, and all that kind of stuff is just, it's beneficial on multiple levels. And the science
Yeah.
backs it up.
Yeah, I just continues to fascinate me. Again started with just a cucumber maybe 13, 14 years ago, and have grown into all of these other things. But the part of that journey and that adventure has been this really fascinating aspect of what I've been doing for myself through my own health in this whole process.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and before we started gardening, it would have been hard to convince us of that. But
Mhm.
now you talk to anybody who's been gardening for a couple of years, and they feel it too. We like to commiserate. We'll get together and say like, "Oh, why am I doing this?" The aphids took out my fava beans, and the whitefly took out my collards, but
Yep.
it's not like we've stopped doing it. We just keep working on it and getting all the benefits from it, even though we sometimes complain more than we toast each other's successes.
Exactly. And again, too, that whole bringing about community too and connection as well. Again, I just get fascinated with all these different aspects of what a garden, really provides for us. And again, too, just, really makes it even more and more worth it, and even more in the sense of recommending this. That's why I like, as a doctor, this is something that you're doing in your profession to help people understand a little bit more. To, ultimately, as I always say, is that we all have a green thumb inside of us. I don't think that a lot of people understand that. They might even deny it, in that sort of sense, but it's there. And if we can find that, there's so many benefits that we get out of doing that we never really thought about before.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And your show helps to remind people about that. It's just like no one should say, "Man, I just can't. I'm just not a musician. I tried playing guitar for a week and I just don't have it. I don't sound like Pat
Yeah.
Metheny or
Right.
Paco de Lucia or something like that." It's just like, "Oh,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
tried it for a week and you're not a pro yet? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you should give it a few years." And
It
so
takes
same things with gardening. Even though it's natural to be able to grow food, like it takes learning
Mhm.
experience.
It does, and as people can see, I do have the guitars that are up on the wall. I do break them down every now and then. I have other ones in the other one. I'm still trying years and years later of practicing. I'm still trying to sound like one of my favorite musicians, and I don't know if I'm getting close enough or not, but I'm out there trying anyways.
Yeah, and you're learning from the process too. I play saxophone. I'm never going to sound like Coltrane or Brecker or these other guys, but it's good for my brain. It's good for me overall to keep practicing and trying to gig and all that kind of stuff. We just got to keep at it. There's a saying, I don't know where it comes from, but there's a saying that says, "You don't have to be good at gardening for gardening to be good for you."
Right.
And that's true. You don't have to. Not everybody's going to grow a 1,200-pound pumpkin, but you can
Yeah.
grow all sorts of great stuff regardless. Yeah.
Yeah. Or as our guest for last week was supposed to be, he grew a 2,700-pound pumpkin. Can you believe that?
That's bigger than anything I've ever seen. I've seen some big ones at that
It
awesome
was the
Baker
world
Creek
record.
Festival.
The world record, yeah. 2749. Unbelievable. Things are monsters. That's what we did last week, was talked about giant pumpkins and fruits and all of that. But yeah, I mean, just so much great stuff, you know, when it comes down to it. I really enjoyed your discussion about that. Again, let's dig a little bit into your garden though too. Let's talk about that just a little bit more too though. I mean, we showed some pictures a little bit earlier and all of that, but you know, what is it for you personally that you enjoy most about your garden?
Yeah. I it's just become part of my identity, I think, as somebody who grows their own food and or a lot of their own food, not exclusively, of course, but someone who grows a
Yeah.
lot of their own food, who who is sort of part of the natural process. Like I understand seasons better and I understand weather better and I feel
Yeah.
more a part of the natural world, much more connected to that. And I think that also goes along with the mental health aspect that it puts us in a healthy place in the grand scheme of things. And so I love all that stuff, but I also love just eating some of the tastiest, freshest stuff.
Yeah.
That I didn't have to, find the keys in my wallet and go out for it, because even if I did and went out to the grocery store, and where we shop has great produce, and we're in California, of course, all this great produce that's grown locally and whatnot. And still 9 times out of 10, what we grow tastes better. And some of it is because we pick it at its peak ripeness. And that's just when things taste better than pick 3 weeks in advance when when a tomato's a little bit pink, and then they sit in a warehouse and they get some gas to mature them and then we buy them, so it's completely different. And you know, I know that I'm wasting less is also part of what I enjoy is, we eat
Mhm.
these really sad looking carrots that would have been tossed out at the farm and never made it
Yeah.
to the shelf, right? And,
Yep.
like a collard that's been eaten a bit by snails and by harlequin bugs, is this local beetle that just likes to eat all
Yeah.
our brassicas. We still eat that,
Mhm.
and I know that and it still tastes great. It doesn't have to be picture perfect, and
Yeah.
I think it reminds us is that this idea of all these uniform colored bell peppers, they're all the same size and they're all the same color, and it's just like I'm sure they grow much more
Mm.
efficiently in some of these big plots than I do, but they throw away a lot of stuff that never makes it to market. And
Yeah.
there was no petroleum involved in me getting this food from farm to table, and I didn't have to put it in a plastic bag and all this kind of stuff. So it just feels like the right for me and our family. It feels like the right thing to do, even though it has its downsides. Like we're getting ready to go out of town, and it seems like there's like 50 things on the to-do list, and I'm going to be a little bit nervous while I'm away from our garden. But
Yeah.
that's just part of it.
Yeah, exactly. When I take trips or when I got to go meet you down at the Heirloom Expo, that's the one thing that's on my mind. I'm having fun at this exposition. I'm seeing all this great food, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, I hope my garden's doing all right. It's really hot still, and I hope that everybody who's set to take care of that's taking care of things, and yeah, and I also really love that point though too about imperfect food, because it's just one of the things I like to really draw into with people is that again, we can appreciate the stuff we get more so than if we're used to shopping at the shopping mart, like you said, and everything looks nice and perfect and all of that too. Is that as gardeners and new gardeners, that's not something we should be expecting when we're growing. But what we can expect though is that no matter how imperfect our food is, it's going to taste better. It's just going to taste better, and then so we can really, really appreciate those things that we're growing more because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like a lot of gardeners, I'm a bit concerned about what the future holds for this planet, for due to our footprint in general, and growing our own stuff is a great way to cut down on our environmental footprint. I don't have to spray with conventional sprays. I don't have to add a whole bunch of conventional fertilizer or even a bunch of manure from a concentrated factory farm or something like that. I can be very specific and very gentle with how we grow at our place, and that feels better. It feels like I'm able to do something for the environment every day instead of just like sit around and worry.
Yeah. Just a little bit of what we can do ourselves individually is really helpful. Yeah. So what are some of those favorite things that you love growing in your garden?
For veggies, our big, I'd say my favorite is probably purple tree collards. It's our friend John Kohler had a bunch of purple and green tree collards that he was sharing and selling down at the Heirloom Festival, and I'm a big fan of those. We're in a climate that allows that to grow as a perennial, and so we just always have tree collards. And tree collards are in the brassica family, as your audience already knows, and we know that the brassica vegetables, the collards and the kale and
cabbage,
pak choi and cabbage and all these brassicas, cauliflower, etc. Are just some of the healthiest vegetables out there for anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer type stuff. And it's just a workhorse. So I love that. Sometimes we have we put spinach, which is not a brassica, but sometimes we'll have spinach that bolts super early, or some of these other things that we have to work more for. But the purple tree collards are just boom. They're just doing it without a lot of attention year round.
Yeah,
So I love that.
Those things are growing, you can really just kind of plant them and let them do their thing. Those are always the best.
For sure. And also self-seeding things. And so in our county, a lot of places, chard we just let the chard go to seed, and then we're always just having new chard pop up. And that's a dark leafy that's not in the brassica family, but it also has, certainly tons of benefits. And so we haven't planted chard for years, but it just we'll pull the ones out in places that we don't want them and let the other ones go. And so that's also a big component of our daily. So I would say I would recommend to folks even is to grow greens. Find the green that works for you at your time of year and in your growing zone, and just make sure that you're growing that, because greens tend to turn into mush in the back of a refrigerator if you buy them at the store every once in a while. But if you're growing them yourselves, you pick them when you want them, and you don't have to store them in the fridge and all that kind of stuff. So that's probably the biggest for on the side of vegetables. If I had to pick just one group, I'd say greens in general, and then I'd say collards as my specific.
Right on. Any least favorites? Anything you have a trouble with, or anything you've just given up on?
That's funny. From a least favorite from a flavor standpoint, for the last couple of years, we've just had bumper crops of cucumbers. My wife is the one who's in charge of the cucumbers. They're not one of my favorite tasting vegetables. It's a fruit biologically, but culinary vegetable. But we've got a bunch of them, and so I'm eating more of them. My daughter is a 10-year-old. She makes a mean cucumber salad, and so I'm eating some of that. From a challenge, I mean, there's certainly some that when the crop fails again and again, I'm like, I got to stop this. But then in January, I'm starting the seeds again to say, okay, this year it's going to work. But so okra for the last couple of years, even if we have 100-degree day, because of the Pacific Ocean's influence, we're dropping down to the mid 50s or upper 50s most of the time during the summer. I'm gonna use that as a reason why my okra doesn't do well. I've had okra do well one year, so it's not bad. I'm doing something wrong, but it's for the last couple of years it's just failed. I think I'm probably going to try next year, even though I'm shaking my head and saying maybe I won't. But so
Yeah, I
that's
love that
one.
because
Eggplants are
that's
a little
that
harder for us too.
eggplants too. I'm not a big fan of eating eggplants. I mention this all the time on the show, but I grow them every year because they actually
Okay.
do really well for me. I love
Oh,
the
good.
different varieties, similar to like peppers and stuff. They got all these cool shapes and colors and different types of eggplants than what you would normally think of your regular like purple eggplants. But yeah, I'm always doing that. But for me, it's similar to what you were saying there about, telling yourself again, "Oh, I'm going to do it again this next year," or "I'm not going to," and then you find yourself doing that. And it works that way for me on brassicas most year because I love growing them. I love most of them. I love eating them. They're really great, but they are a major challenge for me. And I don't know why sometimes, because I live in a great area to actually grow some really good brassicas, but it's mostly probably just gardener error most of the time. But again,
Yeah.
I tell myself, "Oh, darn it," and then again, I got to give up on this. And then the very next year, I'm busting the seeds out again, and I'm giving it another shot every single
Yeah.
year. It just, it's a fun challenge to keep yourself, because that's the one thing too I also say about gardening is that it's very similar to baseball. I'm a huge baseball fan. So, if the season doesn't go great and the team's not doing too good, as we get towards the end of the season, we always tell ourselves every single year, there's always next year.
There's always
There's
next year.
always next year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And yeah, I think having something to wake us up for and to give us this purpose, having challenges. If everything was planned out for us and easy and already set in place, it'd be less and less important to wake up every day. And I think one of the things that's so important for longevity and health in general is something as a challenge and a sense of purpose. And so I think that part of that is wound up in that. And yeah, we have plenty of years where, cauliflower, for example, is this, it barely gives us anything. That's why collards have been our go-to, because a broccolini would be better than like a big heading broccoli. It's for us, we often don't get those picture perfect things that you see in the store, that I don't know exactly how they do it, but that's all right. We're still getting the nutrients in
Yeah. I
some of
can
these other
never
varieties.
seem to get that big, awesome looking broccoli
Right.
head. I can get a ton of the little ones, but you know what? Those little ones are just as good.
Right
And
on.
that's the thing about it, kind of going back to the idea of, what we're thinking about when we're gardening as opposed to what we're buying at a store. We can't be out looking for that picture perfect ultimately. Sometimes those, imperfect ones are just perfectly fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Right on, right on. And actually, here I did pop up one more picture here I wanted to show, because we mentioned just a little bit earlier, John Kohler. Here's our hike, a picture from our hike, which is really fun. John's been a really great friend of mine for many, many years now. Such a big inspiration to everything that I do in gardening and in content creation and all of that sort of stuff. And again, it's really fun. We always go for a really fun hike after the heirloom exposition and everything. So it was really great to have you along for our hike this year and everything. But tell me a little bit more about how you got to meet John and how you got, kind of on this path yourself too, and ending up at the heirloom exposition, giving a talk with him.
Sure. Yeah. I stumbled onto John's work on Growing Your Greens YouTube channel many years ago. He was one of the guys who was teaching me how to garden just by, watching his shows. And
Yeah.
I got, he would show his own place and other folks who were just growing all sorts of stuff, and not just straight little rows of carrots or something like that, but just fitting stuff in where you can and just being able to harvest all the time. And that really was appealing to me. And we're both had been living in the same general area in Northern California. And I think he reached out after seeing me on some interview, And I was super surprised that he did. You always feel it's a little like pinch yourself when one of these YouTube stars like yourself, Enoch, reaches out and you're like, wow, they're talking to me. And and I think it was a good fit because John interviews a lot of people who are gardening and doing great stuff, but my little niche of being a gardener, but also being a doctor and talking about the health benefits of it, I think speaks to him because John, of course,
it's very health centered, very health
health-centered.
centered in this garden.
Yeah. And that was particularly driven home to me as I got to room with him for about a week at the Heirloom Festival down in Ventura. And the man just pays really special attention to everything he puts in his body and is a very healthy guy. And so it seemed it's just been a nice collaboration. I've been on a couple of his episodes and I'm very thankful for him getting the word out about lifestyle medicine and health benefits of gardening. And then, the Heirloom Festival, hosted by Baker Creek Rare Seeds, used to be just in my backyard, just about like a 5-minute walk from my house in Santa Rosa. And had enjoyed learning there and experiencing how fun that is. I recommend totally everybody to get out to it if you haven't. But then they moved down to Ventura a couple of years ago, and I pitched the idea to John that maybe we did a talk together, and the folks at Baker Creek liked it. And I think we packed the house and had, feel really lucky that it was probably just being there with John, but we packed the house, had a lot of great questions during and after the presentation, and would love to do it again if they want me, but feel very thankful for this relationship working with John.
I think next year would get you on a stage just for yourself and have a really great talk. But again, too, I think we were mentioning and talking about you've done plenty of talks like in the medical field at medical conventions and things like that. But to go into a place where, John packs the house. There's a lot of speakers there. You get a lot of them. You get some pretty good crowds and everything. But John packs it out. People get in there, and he's one of the main events, as you would say, at the Heirloom Exposition and everything. So, how was that to be able to get out in front of a big crowd like that?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think part of John's drive is that he's a great animated speaker. No one falls asleep in a lecture with John. He has a knack for being able to present information in a way that's really entertaining. But I think the other thing that draws folks to talks, even if, he was the only speaker talking about health, it's the topic that I think a lot of people are hungry for themselves getting better, helping their loved ones get better. And a lot of folks aren't happy with the general status quo of a pill for every ill. That some healthcare practitioners have to rely on because of either busy clinic schedules or not having the training or not having the support, or maybe not even thinking that the patients want to hear this kind of information. So I think it's definitely John's stardom, his skill, and then also it's just a really important topic that people are really interested in.
Yeah. And he just brings an incredible amount of passion that just kind of, bleeds out of him when he's talking, and very honest too. The guy is, you get what you get with John. He is no different from what you see in his videos or from what he is in person and everything too. And I think it's just that part of him that people really, connect with.
Yeah. I think people realize that he's passionate about this and that he walks what he talks.
That's right.
And that connects with folks too.
Right on. I did have one question I don't want to forget about. Kind of let's see here. Janet asked a little bit earlier, any recommendations for thinning blood without drugs?
That's an interesting one. Go ahead.
Is there anything, in the garden or anything that we're growing that's, that might be helpful in that area?
Yeah. So Um, so for one, I would just disclaimer that
Yeah,
I can't give direct medical advice. And so
exactly.
just
Yeah.
speaking generally, definitely talk with your practitioner, your doc, or your other healthcare practitioner about this. But there are a couple things that come to mind. One is if someone is on blood thinners, there are certain vitamin K containing foods that interact with that. Thinking specifically about Coumadin, also known as warfarin, and its
Right.
interaction with things like green leafy vegetables. And so, when I
Yeah.
prescribe a blood thinner like warfarin, Coumadin, the general approach is not don't eat any greens, but try to eat the same amount of greens every day. And so we know that the blood level and the amount of thinned blood that you have on this medicine will be about the same because we've balanced it with what your daily greens intake is. What you
Yeah.
don't want is someone who eats no greens on day one and 5 cups of greens on day two, and then and then it's just going to be hard to balance that with Coumadin. But that's, Coumadin's an old drug, and there are a lot of newer drugs where you don't have to have that same degree of carefulness with your diet. As far as foods that can help with thinning your blood, I think about more. So yeah, so garlic could have an effect on that, I believe. But I think more about like why in general is somebody's doc or other provider recommending to be on a blood thinner, and it might be because they've had a blood clot, and it might be because they have a cardiac arrhythmia, something like atrial fibrillation being a common one. So I would look at the big picture as well and say, like, are we maximizing all these areas, like eating a healthy diet in general, getting good movement, getting good sleep, all these things that we've been talking about to help, in some cases, potentially prevent some of these conditions, or at least maximize our health. How do you maximize cardiac health with this approach? I mean, you look at what Dr. Dean Ornish showed us in the 90s, which is that
Mhm.
heart disease can be preventable, can be stopped, and sometimes even reversed when you pay attention to these areas. Now, he wasn't looking specifically at blood clots or atrial fibrillation, but we know that approach will maximize our heart health. So that's kind of how I think about that question.
Excellent, excellent. And any other recommendations or anything else you'd like to add to what we talked about today before we let you go? Any
Um,
tips or anything for new gardeners or anything like that?
the tips for new gardeners are probably what is spoken here all the time, but I agree with it, is that start small, start with things that you enjoy eating, and start with things that make sense with your growing area. So look up, the name of your city plus master gardener, and you'll find some real experts in your area who will tell you, hey, you really shouldn't be trying to grow a papaya here in Michigan. Let's pick some things that you
Mhm.
like to eat, but that are easy to grow, because success is a big player on the longevity of a practice, right? And
Yep.
so if your first 2 years fail, you might not try a third year. But if you get some great successes early on, then you can build on that to the point to where, it'll be hard to walk around your house or your garden because you'll be bumping into, all the fruit and vegetable that's
That's
that
right. I love it. I love it, Jeff. And you know what? Thank you so much for spending your time today to talk about all this sort of stuff with us. It was really a great conversation, just like I expected when I thought about bringing you on, for sure. And we'd love to have you back on sometime and maybe dig a little deeper into some of these things. But again,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if you don't mind, I'll just throw in a little promo that if folks are looking
Absolutely.
for a way to address their chronic illnesses with lifestyle medicine, look online, find a lifestyle medicine provider near you. The Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and the Plantrition Project both have databases where you can say, lifestyle medicine provider near me. I work in a group where we cover all 50 states, seeing folks with these issues, doing telehealth, and that's called Love.Life Telehealth. And there are other great groups out there as well. If our group isn't the right fit for you, so I just recommend to everybody that work with your provider or find a second provider to work along with your primary care doc to help you with these issues, because there's another way forward.
That's right. That's right. You want to mention those organizations real quick one more time, and I'm sure Jay might drop us some links in our chat box for everybody as we move along here.
Sure. So if you're specifically looking for a medical consultation with me or one of my coworkers, you could just do telehealth.love.life, or you could put in the search engine love.life telehealth visit. But you could also go to the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, which is a big phrase, but that's pcrm.org, and they have a place to search for lifestyle medicine providers near you. And the plantritionproject.org, I think, would be another place to look for. They have a searchable database for lifestyle practitioners near you. Or just ask your primary doc and say, hey, I heard this crazy doc talking about lifestyle medicine. Do you know anything about it, or anybody in your practice do consultations for lifestyle medicine?
That's just amazing. I wouldn't say crazy at all. I think it's just really awesome, fascinating things. And again, too, some things that, like you were mentioning too, is, even in medicine, they're learning more and more about, the different effects of different things. And I just love the fact that we're bringing in gardening and growing and doing this sort of stuff as an emphasis for creating better health. And I thank you so much for joining with us today, Jeff. It's just been a really awesome conversation. And like I said, we'll have to have you back again real soon.
Thanks, Enoch. I appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you. All right. Again, man, look at it. Just another awesome show here on the Let's Get Growing show here on the Urban Gardener channel. And thank you all so much for joining along with us here for our chat today with Yasmin earlier joining us from the UK. I mean, that was really fun discussion on talking about all of her different gardening adventures in those alleyways of Manchester, England. And of course, talking with Dr. Jeffrey Pierce, Garden and Lifestyle Medicine today. Just what a great conversation there, talking all about how we can utilize our gardens for better health. And again, like I said, we're going to have Jeff to talk a lot more. There's just so much more that we can really dig into and continue that conversation. So again, thank you to them for joining with us here today. Also, I want to mention too, we're going to be back again tomorrow. We're here every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. That's 2 p.m. Eastern. And tomorrow's Sunday edition is the third Sunday of the month. And that means it's time for our monthly gardening book club. And we've got a great book we've been featuring this month. And tomorrow we'll get to talk with Ashley Thomas, the Mocha Gardener, about her book, How to Become a Gardener. I just think this is such a great book. It's finding food empowerment, creating your own food security. This is just a great book. Like I said, I love this book. I love talking to Ashley. It's going to be great. We'll be joined with our good friend Mark Boucher-Colbert. He'll be joining with us live to co-host our monthly book club, as well as talk about what he's got growing on in the garden too. So definitely want to join with us tomorrow for this really great show. And also, we got coming up here too at the end of the month for our Halloween special. This is our special Halloween hangout live stream featuring the original 1960 classic, The Little Shop of Horrors. This has been a really fun fun hangout for all of us. We've been doing here on the Urban Gardener channel way before the Let's Get Growing show. We've been doing that about the last 5-6 years now, and it's so much fun to get together and hang out while we're all just, hanging out at home, handing out treats to all the neighborhood kids. We can get together and hang out and watch this really fun movie. It's a public domain movie. It's the original movie of the Little Shop of Horrors, so we get to watch it here on our show, and we'll have some fun discussion, as well as I mentioned earlier today on the show, that if you want to participate, I'm going to hand out or put out the show link for everybody during that live stream there, so that I can pop you guys on. We can have just a little fun little chat as part of our discussion during that hangout and everything. And if you got some costumes or kids with their costumes and all of that, we can show those off as well too. Just kind of be a fun, nice evening for us all to hang out. It'll just be really great. And again, I also mentioned too that for next week's Saturday show, for the Let's Get Growing show, I am not too exactly sure. We will have us a really great guest. I'll probably announce that on Monday. It's a great reason to make sure that you check in with our YouTube page, the live page there for our YouTube channel. And I will get a new show posted probably Monday, as we'll find out exactly who our guest will be. We're trying to keep it open to see if we can possibly get Travis Ganger on the show. We had an issue with getting him on this last Saturday, and we'd love to talk with him all about his world record giant pumpkin that he grew last year and his adventure down to the Half Moon Bay competition this last week. So hopefully he'll be joining with us next Saturday. If not, we'll find us a really great guest to jump in and join with us, as well as, again, our Sunday edition next week too. We're going to have a nice roundtable conversation with our good friends Kang Star, joining us from the Kang Star channel down in Texas, and our good friend Christopher Bransdahl, who was in the chat a little bit earlier in the show. But he joins us all the way up from the cold mountains of Norway. So it's great to have them. They've been really good friends of mine for years. And so it's going to be really fun to catch up with them again to hear this next Sunday. So we got lots and lots of great things coming up here on the show. So I hope that you continue to join with us here. And again, too, if you are with us still here as we're in the show, definitely click the like button, hit that thumbs up button there if you haven't already before you head out, and also click the subscribe button if you haven't, and definitely hit the bell notification so you can be notified of all of our upcoming videos and live streams, and definitely be sure to share with all of your friends out there. And like I said, follow all of our links down in the description below. We've got links to our guests, as well as Sarah's Seed Shop, all of them as well. And too, if you can, we do have a link for our Urban Gardener community. We do have a Facebook group called, appropriately, the Let's Get Growing group. And that's really fun for everybody to continue the conversation, as well as be able to share all of what you've got growing on in your gardens. I love to see what you all have growing on. So come and join with us there in the Let's Get Growing group. And also, before I go to, I want to mention this. I am giving away some free seeds. We have our free Prax Cherry tomato seeds. I was giving those away down at the National Heirloom Exposition. We got some left over for everybody. If you do want some of those to grow in your own garden, definitely send me an email to letsgetgrowing@mail.com. That's just mail.com, not gmail.com. So don't get it confused. Letsgetgrowing@mail.com, and send me an email. Just put in their free seeds in the subject line, and then I will email you back with some instructions on how you can get some of those seeds for yourself. And definitely go and check out our sponsor, Ivy Organics, at ivyorganic.com, and get some of their 3-in-1 plant guard. This is just a really great product for your garden. You should have this in your garden shed. And if you do go and get some of that, use our promo code GROW10, GROW10, to save 10% off. So again, everybody, it's been a really great show today, and I thank you all so much for spending your time with me on Saturday. I hope you come and join with us tomorrow for our great book club, and I'll see all of you then.